The world is going crazy right now, trying to figure out game theory for what's going on, what's coming next, with everything going on with Iran, Trump, and right now, even with all of the other nations, including China, Russia, as well as a lot of the Middle East. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of that game theory, because what was interesting is Trump talked a little bit about playing this game of chess. So first, let's take a quick look at this clip.
Only because people don't understand to a large, it's a big chess game at a very high level. It's a very high level chess, the highest. And I'm dealing with very smart players. These are smart people. They don't get there. You know, when you deal with some of these people, you're dealing with high level intellect, very high IQ people. These are not Jasmine Crockett and her group. These are smart people. These are really smart people, and violent people, and vicious people, and some very nice people. And some are very nice but violent. They turn violent. But you know what? If I didn't do what I did, we would have been hit. Number one, very important, was the termination of Obama's horrible deal. And number two, this beautiful plane hitting them 8 months ago, whatever it was, and taking out their nuclear capacity. That totally threw them for a loop.
Now, the context of this, you can infer that he's talking about oil and some of the other things directly with Iran. But as many of us, the ANONS, the sleuths, and some of the key researchers, we've talked a lot about this game of chess that is being played. And so I want to read a little bit, some commentary, and go over some Q drops today, and just let you guys kind of think on this and see that progress is being made in the sense of this whole operation that can't really be publicized for the world to be overtly told, but rather for many of us to infer and to have this faith, this prayer, to be able to really sense that something else must be going on. So let's take a quick look at some of these drops. Now, there's a lot of drops, 4281 being the one that a lot of people go to, regarding this game of chess. So it reads, how about a nice game of chess? Checkmate king, or objective end, checkmate king. Do you attack the king at the beginning of the game? Do you attack and remove pawns first? Do you attack and remove bishops, rooks, knights next? Do you attack and remove queen mid to end? Is the game being played public or private? Do emotions affect critical thinking? And I won't read a lot of these other posts, but again, something bigger going on. And Trump here has been tweeting a lot, or truthing a lot, about some of these sort of geopolitical implications and the messages that he's been sending out to some of the other countries, especially the NATO nations. Now, one of the posts here that a lot of news outlets and people have talked about is regarding NATO and their involvement. And I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but one of the things that's interesting that he called out was Japan, Australia, or South Korea, and speaking for on behalf of other nations and what the continual decimation of Iran's military is. And here he says, likewise, these three countries, where he says that he does not need, or the country, the U.S., does not need the help of anyone. So again, that's interesting that he called this out. And again, many other nations, but I want to read a little bit of commentary by Clandestine, and he makes some interesting commentary. He says, hear me out. Trump called out Germany, South Korea, and Japan for not willing to help with the Strait of Hormuz. What do these nations have in common? They are where we have the greatest standing military presence outside the U.S. I think Trump is not just setting up a withdrawal from NATO. I think he's setting up a withdrawal of our military presence around the globe, and will eventually begin the process of consolidating U.S. military presence to the Western Hemisphere once we are done with Iran and the war in Ukraine is over. I think the end goal is to normalize relations with Russia and China, and thus the permanent end to the Cold War that never really ended. This is only possible by removing U.S. military presence off of China and Russia's doorstep, as well as ending Russian/Chinese meddling in our hemisphere via places like Venezuela and Cuba, which is already happening. What if the US, Russia, and China just agree to stop the espionage, weapons of mass destruction, proxy wars, and meddling in each other's regions? What if the superpowers were on the same side instead of against each other? It's possible, and things seem to be inching in that direction. Russia and China are losing their influence in the Western Hemisphere, and Trump is posturing like he's going to remove our presence in the Eastern Hemisphere. I think we are witnessing a restructure of the global order, and the global alliances as we know them are about to shift dramatically. Now, again, it's interesting because that reminds me of post 140, where it says, what if China, Russia, and others are coordinating with POTUS to eliminate the New World Order? Remember, some of the optics from a global perspective is that, oh, it's Russia versus US or China versus US. But what if there's something that's being done optically from a public facing perspective, but behind the scenes, there's already been agreements, already been plans made to make sure that, again, they're not, in one, uniform ideology, but rather they are benefiting from each other's help to remove certain evils from this world. And that might be what is happening in this circumstance. Now, Clinical Publius makes a very interesting post as well. I just want to read some of it. We are in a period of historic global realignment. In 20 to 30 years, it's quite possible that the global order will look like this. Number one, the US's closest allies will be Eastern Europe, Latin and South America, Japan, Israel, Iran, India, and the Gulf Arab states. Number two, rapprochement between the USA, Russia, and China will have been achieved. Not allies per se, but not a threat to each other. And number three, the countries that will be the USA's biggest adversaries will be the Islamized Western European nations, and NATO will have dissolved. Also, we will be in a non-hot war of ideas with Australia and New Zealand. Number four, Canada will still be Canada, and Africa will still be Africa. Number five, Pakistan and Afghanistan will still be a mess. Number six, unsure of South Korea. Greenland will be the most popular American casino tourist destination, second only to Vegas, and again, so on and so forth. The idea that some of the world order being shifted is not what many of us are thinking is the norm. And Clandestine mentions this, but he says here that I think that we are witnessing Trump and the U.S. military's plan to save the world, uproot illegitimate regimes and proxies, eliminate global rogue assets, return nations to their people, prevent World War III before it begins, consolidate spheres of influence, normalize relations, and then finally, world peace. And you got to ask yourself, Trump was scheduled to go to China at the end of March, but he confirmed that they have rescheduled for April. And so you got to think about it from a logical perspective. If Trump, and this is going off of Clandestine's comment here, would Trump be going to China right now if he and Xi were at odds? Of course not. Trump and Xi must already have an agreement in place. And as much as Trump gets a lot of harp for the things he says and his actions, but you got to remember, he's a master tactician. He says here, even in one of his recent interviews, I have long said that I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test because we don't need them, but they should have been there. And as I've said before, Trump is backed by many white hats, and we are in a process, a long planned phase of an execution of a crazy takedown or whatever it is of the global order. And we're seeing that come into effect and play out right now. Iran has been talked about with Q and many others for a very long time, the nuclear stuff, the nuclear deal. He mentions Obama and just many other things from the past and the deal that has been taken. But we're seeing all of that being dismantled. You saw Ukraine, you saw the Israel and the Middle East thing. You saw many other nations, and now we're seeing some of the biggest things in the Gulf states in the Middle East taking place right now. So let me know what you guys think. There's a lot of analysis, a lot of thinking going on, and it's still being played out. Obviously, let things settle, let the dust settle. Want to know what you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. A lot of it is very interesting, but we got to be in prayer. You got to be discerning, but as much as possible, be well researched. But at the same time, don't take things at face value when Trump says something, when news says something, because again, this is the fog of war that we are living in, because you're not going to just say everything outright and say, oh, this is what we're going to do. This is the reasons for that. But rather, there's something else going on. There are chess moves being played, as Trump just mentioned, and he's giving objective statements to everything. And that first clip I talked about, he even commends some of the leaders. They're smart people, right? These are smart people that turned violent, and he's saying it objectively, as is without bias or emotion in some sense. So he's seeing it from a rational perspective. He's seeing it and saying, yeah, these guys are sharp. These are good, smart guys, but they have turned violent. So a lot of this is being done for a reason. You're seeing him say things, truth things, tweet things for a strategic purpose. So let it play out. Let's see what happens. Love you guys. Talk to you guys very soon.